Is it on? I'm Brad Wasson. I'm the revenue manager for the city of Sacramento. And I want to thank you for coming to this meeting on our status on cannabis regulations. First, I want to go over a couple ground rules. Let's put our cell phones on quiet, and we need to be respectful. Everyone should get a chance to speak, and please don't interrupt someone who is speaking or talk over them. We'll recognize the speakers, and we're going to use microphones. The comments are going to be recorded by Renell on the screen, and we're also recording this meeting. The agenda, did everybody get an agenda? The agendas are out back, and if you haven't already given us your contact information, please put that on the sign-up sheet so we can notify you of future meetings and the progress we're having. Okay, so we have Renell Kawasaki here. She's going to be recording the comments. And up front was Ken Ress, and he is going to be our roving mic when we get to the question and answer period. We have Randy Knott from the city manager's office, who's going to be presenting the detail. And we have Joy Patterson from the community development department that can answer some land use questions. And then just want to mention, we have a pretty extensive city team. We have representatives from the police department, the fire department, the attorney's office, building inspectors, utilities department, economic development. So as a city, we're putting resources together to try and do this right. And part of doing it right is getting information to you folks and then getting feedback from you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Randy Knott from the city manager's office.
I'm much louder, so hopefully that helps. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. I'm going to go over a couple of things. One is an update as to where we are now, and then what comes next, and then that will probably generate lots of questions, and we'll have plenty of time for that. For those of you who are wondering, there's another meeting from 6 to 8 in case you can't get enough of this. I know I can't. I'll be here. But in that case, it's the same topics, the same everything. It's just whatever works for everyone's schedule. At one point, we were saying, oh, well, we'll have the neighborhoods and the business associations, then we'll have the cannabis stake. Everybody's welcome to come, and we think it'll actually be better to have people hear the different questions that are coming from the different sectors and help, gain some understanding between everybody. Anyway, those who probably know, the city council recently approved a ordinance allowing commercial cultivation. We have some additional pieces that we need to come back to the council on, and those are in particular, they have requested a buffer zone from parks, and we are going to be very careful about that, make sure it's an active park where children actually are, not just a strip of land that makes it more difficult for you to find places for your businesses. So we're going to be very conscious of what we describe to be, in fact, a park. There's a lot of parkland in a lot of places. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a place where kids gather and that we have to be that concerned about it. The other piece, so that's the buffer zone for parks. The other piece we were directed, we had originally come to City Council with a recommendation to lift the current prohibition on delivery. And under state law, we were allowed at that point to only allow delivery from dispensaries. We got feedback back from the council that they are willing to consider delivery-only dispensaries. So that would mean a lift of the current moratorium on dispensaries. That doesn't necessarily mean there'll be able to be more retail storefronts, but there's likely the council will allow for the delivery-only model for those of you who are going to be cultivators or doing other businesses and also want to have a delivery service. So we're in the process of working on that and seeing what that's going to look like. We're very open to your recommendations, your concerns, things that you know that we don't. So that is the other piece. And then the other part on the social justice portion, the criminal history, we're going back and making that, frankly, a little bit looser. We want to ensure that there are people who have actually gone to jail or had difficulty before it was legal. It's now legal. We want to ensure that folks have an opportunity to go into business, to be part of it, either to work there. So we're going to loosen that up a little bit. So we'll be returning to City Council on cultivation with the parks buffer, with the criminal history lightened up, and then also we'll be coming back with a delivery-only dispensary. The last piece I forgot on cultivation is the neighborhood responsibility plan. We originally had a recommendation for a voluntary community benefit plan. It has morphed somewhat to a mandatory neighborhood responsibility plan. What that's going to look like is still a little bit up in the air, but it will be part of your conditional use permit conditions. It will be part of your operating permit. So, and there'll be several ways to go about that, and we'll be vetting that as we get a little bit closer. The next piece we have coming, and that was the original call for the meeting today, is manufacturing and lab testing. That is the next use that we've been directed by the council to work on. I wish I could tell you for sure when that's coming to council, but first we have to finish the cultivation ordinance. Then we need to lift the moratorium on cultivation, so now that we have an ordinance, and then we need to be able to allow you to apply for those. So we're hoping that will happen in the first quarter of next year, closer to January than to April. Again, then the manufacturing and testing, we brought a piece to the Law and Legislation Committee, which sees all policy before it goes to council. And it was pretty straightforward. Almost like any other manufacturing business in the city. We are looking at non-volatile extraction only. I know that's not necessarily what every stakeholder wants, but that is what the council has directed us to do at this point. And as we've learned from our colleagues in Colorado, in Washington, and Oregon, this changes constantly. So as the industry grows, as it matures, as we get more information, that could change. At this point, it is going to be non-volatile. So that is something to think about. We expect to bring that after we bring the cultivation ordinance back for consideration to the city council. And I would say the cultivation ordinance will come back with the items we discussed probably late January. So any questions so far? Cool. You do.
Yeah. Is there a definitive definition of volatile versus non-volatile?
According to the fire code, there is, and we let our fire folks do that, and based upon the research we did in the other jurisdictions, for example, butane is volatile, CO2 is not.
There's a whole host of others that I'd like to understand. Are they or aren't they?
We're going to take questions when we wrap up, and we want to capture those questions and comments so that we can look at it.
Where in the fire code do I find that?
I'm not a fireman, but we're going to wait to ask questions until we're done with the presentation, which is almost done.
Okay.
I don't have that much, but I just want to make sure I touch on everything. We are also coming back with fees for cultivation. What it's going to cost for you to get your operating permit, to apply and receive your operating permit. Those fees will cover not just the cost of us reviewing your operating plan and ensuring that you have the appropriate conditional use permit, but it will also take care of some of the costs of implementing the program, policing the program, both legal and illegal cultivation, because we want to make sure that we have good actors that are going by the program, people who are doing what they're supposed to do. It will give us the resources to come down on the folks who are not and who are acting outside the system. So let me just make sure. Fees, lifting the moratorium, the neighborhood responsibility plan, certifying the cultivation ordinance, and looking at lab testing. Obviously, once we get past that, the next step will be distribution and transportation. And right now, it's just marijuana. We are not distinguishing at the moment between medical and adult use. That's going to become somewhat irrelevant as we continue through the process. And Brad, did I miss anything that we needed to touch on? That's a lot of information. So we are here as a team to answer your questions. If we can't answer them today, we will get back to you. And at each step, we will continue to have stakeholder meetings like this one. Again, there's another one tonight in case you have to split early or you just can't get enough of us. But we will continue to have these meetings, take your input. If you're not, please make sure you sign in so that we can keep you on the stakeholder list. And I will turn it over for questions. Actually, this gentleman was first. Oh, did you want to talk
Sure,
about?
I'll re-ask the question.
Okay.
I've been following the non-volatile versus volatile, and in the early drafts, it referred to something that wasn't even there. And so I'm confused as to where to find the definition and how to be able to bank on that in terms of being able to get a permit.
At this point, we will have that obviously in the staff report, and it'll explain it. But the best place to go back to is the Bureau of Cannabis Safety and Regulation. Go to the state and see their definition. That's what we'll be relying on as well.
Not there.
It's not there yet. Exactly. We know that.
Okay, so this has been going on for like 6 months at least, if not longer. What are the issues? I don't quite get it.
We
Because
don't
it's
want
really,
folks to
really
blow
important
up.
To a manufacturer. It's extremely important to understand this.
We understand completely, but we have, from the information we've gotten going around the country, going around the state, looking at best practices, as far as the recommendations staff is making, we believe there are processes that are non-volatile, that are safer for our community, and frankly, easier to sell to the community at large who's not a fan of cannabis, period. So we have to realize we're not acting in a bubble.
So we do not have that information right now. The fire department is looking into it along with our legal department. So we don't have anything to tell you today on the extraction for volatile versus non-volatile, but we will have to have it in place before we adopt the ordinance. Ken, you're in charge of.
Yeah, then.
Yeah, my question is regarding the definition of the park. You mentioned something about that there are parks with children and the other parks, just parks. What would you classify the Cesar Chavez Park right outside here?
Good question. I would classify that as an occupied park that the council would count that in the distance requirement. What they're more looking at is like a bike trail or open space that wouldn't count as a park, even though officially in our land use it is categorized as a park. So it's not, I don't believe it's going to end up just being children, but it's more.
Active versus non-active.
So would this be classified as active or
Yes.
non-active?
Active. There's people in it on a regular basis.
So this basically would,
Thank you.
So
So
that,
this park would be part of the requirements that impose.
okay. So this is another area we haven't fully landed on, and the attorney and the land use folks are looking at it to come up with a definition. We don't have that for you, but I would think, in my opinion, that would be a park that the city council would want to have a distance requirement from.
I see. The reason my question is because there's a restaurant in there with the alcohol being sold in there. And
Sure.
I guess, wouldn't that be, one of those things that you don't want to have children or people underage in there?
Well, they serve beer at Chuck E. Cheese. Alcohol has been, it's true. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make logical sense, but the community is used to alcohol. This is very new. And cannabis is a different product, but the majority decision will be based upon whether or not there are people frequenting it. This is also a park when children visit the Capitol or visit City Hall. They go and have their lunch there. I'm going to let our planner.
I'll just say, a lot of the parks already are in single-family residential zones surrounded by single-family or multiple-family residential zones. So they're the 600-foot distance. A lot of them are attached to schools, which you have to be 600 feet away from anyway. So we're going to come up with a definition of park, but as they're saying, it's a lot of the parks, a lot of the sites where you can locate a cultivation site are already further away than 600 feet. So it's only going to, we're going to come up with a definition, and it'll affect some of the parks. Well, no, but I mean, you have to be 600 feet away from the active park. Most of them, yeah.
Thanks.
That's Joy Patterson.
Yeah, my question is centered around public safety and just thinking forward when we all start operating. I like to suggest that a committee be formed so that we can address the cash management issues that will, bring up some public safety issues. And so I know that our state and national congressmen and senators voted to really allow the use of our banking system. And so there's a Sacramento credit union. I would like for us to really have a discussion with them so that we can have a safe harbor in terms of cash management to reduce public safety. Has that been given any thought?
We haven't discussed a committee, but we have discussed the issue. In your operating permit, we're asking folks to give us their cash handling plan to do the best that we can to ensure it's done in a safe manner. We already have dispensaries that deal wholly in cash and come and pay their business taxes at times in cash here at City Hall. What I can tell you as the Government Affairs Director is one of the things we'll be pushing on our legislative platform this year is asking the federal government to go ahead and allow the states who allow have legalized cannabis to allow for banking. Under the president-elect and the selection he's made of Attorney General, my hopes are not as high as they were, but it doesn't mean we won't keep trying. But that is absolutely on our radar.
Yeah, but the federal government did produce and outline a path forward to banking with national banks.
That was under President Obama.
Yeah, and we don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
But mine is those particularly to the state of California, right? So in terms of the Sacramento Credit Union, right, and all of this money is within our state, federal government is not coming in to penalize. What has happened in terms of fees is that the Sacramento Credit Union will probably charge us a lot more money, but I would probably like to weigh on the side of putting my money in the credit union than in a vault in my facility.
Yeah, at this point, number one, that's private commerce and it's not our purview. It's certainly something that I know the legislature is talking about because they've already gone ahead with so many related items as it relates to cannabis, and I'm sure they'll be talking about it. Again, these banks, even the credit unions, are FDIC insured, which means they will lose that accreditation if they go ahead and do business with cannabis companies, yet we know there are credit unions that are willing to risk that. That is frankly a business decision for the most part. Other than the cash handling and doing the best we can to ensure public safety, that is a piece that we're going to lobby for in the big picture, but speaking with the banking institutions on an individual basis, that's a business decision that is outside the purview.
I think it's further discussion, right?
Absolutely. Please wait till you get a mic.
Hello.
Yeah, and it would really help if you guys could identify yourselves, so if we need to get back to you with more information, like this gentleman, that we know who we are.
So Justin, I've been working with the city of Sacramento for quite some time, and I work in the medical marijuana brick and mortar side, the retail side. Just out of curiosity, are we paying attention to Assembly Bill 266? I noticed we talked about a delivery license being issued separate from what Assembly Bill 266 was saying, that they want brick and mortars that are licensed to be the ones to deliver. Is this something we're working with them on, or do you
No, we're paying attention to state law. In fact, we lobbied for that and for the approval of it. The difference is we staff came with a recommendation to lift the prohibition on dispensaries delivering right now. The city council, in its purview, had the right to vote no, and they did. And they don't want to lift that prohibition until they create an avenue for other people who are not retail front property, because we have a moratorium, to be able to do that. So both of those will be coming back.
Understood. As a whole other entity that can deliver.
Right.
But also following the model of going through a distributor?
Absolutely. Everything's going to have to go through that model. And with 64 passing, that's twisting a little bit. So we're watching it just as closely as everybody else is.
When these conversations are they held by stakeholders, or is there another internal group that is talking about these new licenses being issued or availability on deliveries? Out of curiosity.
It actually happened at the dais, at the council meeting in public on TV.
Got it. I must have been locked out that day. So.
Hope not.
Merry Christmas, though, by the way. Thank you for
Happy
that.
Hanukkah.
Don't get to keep them on.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Brady. I'm with a company called PureCon. Question on manufacturing. The waste material. Have you guys thought about when does it not constitute being marijuana anymore and just is inert?
Some of this stuff is the state's purview, and they still don't have their regs.
There's nothing in the state.
There's
that talks
nothing.
about waste.
And we are going to have rules related to our solid waste, and also not just for that, but as well for the water waste stream. Our Department of Utilities and our Solid Waste Division are looking at that. But we really are hoping for some guidance from the state, because we hope it will be uniform across the states, that folks know if they have a business in Fresno and a business in Sac, not Fresno, but Oakland and Sac and LA, that you'll have the same rules, kind of like plastic bags. Oh.
Hi, my name is Arthur. I'm an attorney. I want to go back to the issue of the school parks or schools with parks adjacent, and just make a recommendation that you consider a distance that's either at 600 or less than 600. The only reason being is that if you look at some of the parks that are adjacent to schools, they're only really being used during school hours. What this will do, by the definition, is increase that 600 radius to more like 1,200, 1,800 plus feet from the actual school facilities where the kids are. And the intent and purpose, of course, is to keep the industry 600 feet away. That's by state law. But here we have this issue with the way that a lot of the schools here in Sacramento are designed. You have these school parks that are separately zoned as parks, and yet if you use those boundaries and add 600 foot for them, for example, we're looking at certain areas where you're 1,800 feet away from the school facilities.
We understand. We appreciate that. Mr. Fong, I think there was another gentleman here, and then Mr. Fong.
Jason with A Plus Organics and Fatty's Rosinol. We are a delivery service here in town, and we've been trying to pay taxes, but you guys won't let us.
Because you're illegal.
Yeah. So.
I'm sorry.
But my point is, I really hate it that we have to operate like that. And,
so do we.
At what point will delivery stop being tabled? Like every time I come here, we kind of table it a little bit. Like when do we get to really dive into it so I can give you money?
We'd love to take your money, because then we can bust people who are doing it outside the law. At this point, it will come back. We tried to take the first step. The council wants it to come back as a whole. I believe it will be the next thing on the plate after we come back with the changes to the cultivation ordinance.
And my biggest concern is that you're going to regulate it like a brick and mortar. And
No.
Because a brick and mortar.
It's not a brick and mortar. People are not going to be coming to you.
And the time it takes to execute one delivery, 20 have been taken care of at a brick and mortar. So I'm just kind of worried about being too regulated if we're being implemented like a brick and mortar would be.
No, we realize the difference between people coming back and forth. It will definitely be a different structure. But technically, under state law, you'll still be a dispensary, and we have a current moratorium on dispensaries. So we were trying to take the baby step of allowing the existing brick and mortar dispensaries to start delivering, and then the council said it had an appetite to go ahead and regulate businesses like yours, and they've given us that direction. So I would say it'll come back by the second quarter of 2017.
Is there anything you would recommend other than paying our sales tax that we can do to not be kind of illegal and show that we're as compliant as possible?
We appreciate that. Just, don't get in trouble in between now and the time you can. It puts us in we're really trying to have kind of an unofficial amnesty situation going on, but it's like the 1920s lifting prohibition. It just hasn't been done before, so we're doing the best we can. But thank you for your honesty and your interest, and we'll keep everybody posted.
Thank you.
Got a bunch of folks. I'm letting them come in. Yep.
Thanks, Randall. So to follow up on the last question, is delivery not coming back with the cultivation ordinance now?
I don't know. I would love it if we can. We will. If not, it'll be shortly thereafter. That was a direction from council, was to come back with the stuff related to the cultivation ordinance. We have no additional staff than we had before. What was MRSA now is MRCSA, and 64 passed. And so we are honestly doing the best we can. We're hiring people right now without the money coming in because, we haven't been able to regulate it yet. But that will be the close second if it doesn't come back concurrently.
So I guess then the meat of my question is, irrespective of whether it's coming back at the end of January with the balance of the cultivation ordinance or sometime later in the first quarter of next year, what will be the public process going forward to, you've had some really good public process around cultivation, the stakeholders. Will there be that kind of robust sort of public discussion around delivery?
Yes. Every meeting we have now, we're not keeping it in the boxes. We just wanted to get to cultivation first because that was kind of the loudest, biggest, and has the most land impact. We would love to hear from everyone on this, and we're listening now. And we have an idea. We did, honestly, as staff, we did not think the council had an appetite to lift the moratorium on dispensaries, but that was the only way that we could allow delivery only. They have now told us that they do, so we can work on it. It shouldn't be terribly complicated, but we have to PFP. You of all people, former council member, know the process. It's just getting everything done, and a lot of it is the ordinance, the legal writing. The narratives are easy to write. But if you have preferred language you would like to share with us that you have from another jurisdiction, if you have anything that you think will enlighten us, I know I've received a lot of information on manufacturing from folks at Bloom Farms and other businesses, and we're listening. We could, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If something's working, great, send it to us and we'll make sure it gets in.
Have you guys, I know you guys went out to Oakland to study what they've done, and have you gotten a chance to look at what they're doing with delivery-only dispensaries?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and we've also, we went to Sparks, we've also been to Oakland, we've been in Denver, and we met the 400 other cities around the country that are also doing this at this point, and it's very enlightening. We're trying to come up with best practices. By all means, our email has no limit. We would love language. And again, if we can copy a best practice, that's going to be our first go-to because it's going to make it go a lot faster.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, my name's Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
I guess my question is, as far as zoning for manufacturing, i.e. extraction, do you have any idea what type of zones you will allow that in?
We believe we're going to recommend that it be allowed where any other type of manufacturing is allowed, because we have the kind of the safety stopgap of, because it's a cannabis-related business, it's going to have to get a conditional use permit. So beyond that, we have no reason to recommend additional restrictions. What the council will ultimately determine, we don't know, but at this time, Joy, am I correct? We're going to recommend exactly what we would for any other kind of manufacturing. Now, if it's a bakery and your only extraction process is water, that will fall, even though it's looked at as manufacturing, we'll have to probably find some sort of hybrid where it fits, because if it's water and not CO2 and not some other kind of substance, then we probably don't have the same restrictions that we would have. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Christopher Cohen, Square Grouper. Hello. What are the zones for manufacturing that you were just talking about? Does anyone know what they are?
Let me ask our resident zoning administrator. Everybody, this is Joy.
Hi. So manufacturing is allowed in the light industrial, the heavy industrial zones, heavy commercial zone, the manufacturing and manufacturing research and development zone. It is allowed up to 6,400 square feet in the general commercial zone, but I'm sure that that will be a contention of debate when we get to commission and council.
And one more quick question. Are you looking at capping dispensaries maybe, but any of the other businesses, cultivation, manufacturing, putting a cap number on it, or are you leaving it a free enterprise system?
Not at this time. Staff hasn't recommended it. It hasn't been requested, but we for delivery services, though, we are going to dispensaries, delivery only dispensaries, because there's a lot of them, a whole lot of them.
Tiana Garcia, Alternative Gardens. Are you going to allow manufacturing, do you think, in agriculture?
No.
Okay, thank you.
We can't record it if you're not talking into the microphone, so.
One more question. Are you going to allow cultivation and manufacturing on the same premises? Is that something that's being talked about?
Those are the two licenses you have.
Yeah, if those are the two licenses you're going for, and the plan makes sense when you submit your conditional use permit, I can't see why not.
Justin, again, I apologize. The registrants that have registered previously for cultivation, what happens to those people? Do they keep continuing on as usual, or?
So all the registration did was allow you to continue cultivating where you were.
Correct.
And that's it. And so you can continue cultivating while you're going through the application process.
Got it.
But you'll need to apply within a certain amount of time. So you can't just use the registration forever.
Just the other caveat on that is, because the businesses under law aren't currently legal, if you have a complaint, code enforcement, police issues, it's not because we shared the list with anybody, it's outside of our purview. So we've just kind of had this general people's agreement. We're buddies.
So this is our third follow-up question to that. With the City Council not very committed yet as to distance requirements and potentially adding parks and other...
Definitely adding parks. That was the direction we got from the council.
Okay, definitely adding parks, distance to be determined. If there are registered cultivators that are within that zone, can they move and keep the registration?
The registration, importantly, no. Yeah, the short answer is no. Originally, we were trying, like we did with the dispensaries, to create a registration list. Unfortunately, we got so many respondents, and the applications were not complete in any way, shape, or form. So what we did was say, you know what, this is our stakeholder list. So no one who signed up to register, besides having that ability to keep going until you get your application in, there's no special dispensation for being on the registration list. All it meant was that you could communicate back and forth. So no.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Steve. So I understood at the council meeting that the staff language held in terms of distance in parks. It was 600. It was the schools. I'm wrong about that?
When we went back, I heard the same thing. When we went back and looked at the tape, it was agreed to that we would come back, that staff was directed to come back with a parks buffer. It could get voted down, but we've been given the direction to come back with a proposed one.
Is it possible that if something like that came up in a site, cultivation site, that it would be part of the call-up element?
Well, it depends. It's hard to speculate, because we could bring a park buffer zone as requested by the council. They can approve it and say okay, or they might say, you know what, we changed our minds, we want to do it through the CUP process. I'm going to let Joy.
I'm just going to say, even if there wasn't a park buffer in the ordinance, the hearing officer or hearing body still has the right to take that park into consideration when determining whether to approve, conditionally approve, or deny the permit.
Thank you. Robert Finkel, I'm an attorney. With respect,
I'm a lobbyist.
What's that?
I'm just teasing. A lot of attorneys in the audience.
Yeah. So, with respect to the CUP process, I mean, it's a lengthy process, right? Let's say 6 months or so, approximately.
Depends. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think I'd heard before. Is there any way to apply a CUP for a grow to a manufacturing or to one of these delivery dispensary permits that you're talking about? In other words, do you have to go through CUP on the same space more than one time?
No, that would not make sense. If you are proposing a cultivation and delivery only dispensary. Oh.
No, we don't know, and delivery won't need a use permit.
Yeah, delivery won't need a use permit. It depends what the combination is and how it's presented to when you submit the contract. It's too nebulous to give you a straight, absolute answer.
I understand that.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You get a secret? Oh, well, this is a question. Oh, okay. The question is, who's going to be responsible for issuing licenses, and will the licenses give the right to grow and sell? Well, the city is going to issue local permits, local operating permits, and you can't get a state permit without a local permit. So you are going to want to come to the city first. As far as the license giving you a right to grow and sell, that's hard to answer because it depends. If you're going for a cultivation license and you have everything in place, you're allowed to grow. As far as selling, that's going to depend upon how you plan on selling. If it's a delivery-only dispensary attached to your cultivation, it really depends on the business plan and program you bring forward in your conditional use permit. So I hope that answered a little bit of this. There are all kinds of combinations we haven't even thought of yet. Yeah, the second question was, does the license give you a right to grow and sell? It depends. If you requested one and it meets the requirements, then in essence, yes. But grow and sell is a very nebulous concept. Yeah, sell to the public, are you wholesale? Are you selling to dispensaries? Are you, there's a lot of ifs attached to this one. Yes.
Hi, my name is Harry Bennett. My company is Floor Seed, and we're a manufacturer here. Is there going to be a registration opportunity for manufacturers like you had for, you're just speaking of about the cultivation? So, and so we just continue on, and I was wondering what the timeline's going to be. Because as you know, 2679 was just passed. That's only good for the next year. So can we expect to get that protection? Well, before, like we're supposed to?
The idea
it's only good until 2018.
Yeah. Right. We are hoping to bring manufacturing and testing to council after the cultivation ordinance is complete. Then we have to come back with the delivery options for dispensaries, delivery-only dispensaries and regular dispensaries. Then manufacturing and lab testing is next. I would say by the first half of 2017, we'll be coming to council with a recommendation. Should still be within the time. Then again, the state's not issuing adult use licenses until a minimum of January 2018. So it depends whether you're medical, and there's... But we are going to come back to council with recommendations for manufacturing and lab testing facilities before the summer, for sure. Hopefully earlier than that.
Hi, my name's Chris with Back to the Farm. We're very interested in the micro license the state is going to offer. How is that going to work with the different local permits?
So we're going to have 3 categories to mirror the state on their grows. So up to 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, and then 22,000 square feet.
Okay. And can you run a dispensary from that same location like the micro license that the state is going to offer does?
We have not looked into that.
Okay. Yeah,
So it won't. Our licenses are going to be separate. So cultivation license is separate from a dispensary, from a manufacturer. They're all going to be separate.
Okay. Because the reason that they made the micro license was so you could have a small operation and be fully vertically integrated. But it seems like that being vertically integrated isn't going to be possible even on a small scale in the city.
We have not looked at that.
Okay. Also,
Yeah.
I'm looking at a commercial building that maybe I'm looking at an outdated zoning map, but it looks like it's in a residential zone, but it's also not within 600 feet, even close to 600 feet. Is the fact that it's in a residential zone just make it not allowed right away?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, even though we can't give business advice. Yeah.
Philip Knott. Are there any details for the conditional use permit, as you described, for you would have to submit the details for your business? Is that captured anywhere, the details for what that needs to be?
That's actually on the city's website in the planning section,
Okay.
the community development department. It's all lined out.
And the fees as well?
Not yet for this type of, oh yes, I'm sorry, they're all standard.
So the fees are all included,
Mhm.
and then the state permit is the one that we don't have the information for, but the conditional use and the operating permit.
Well, the conditional use permit, the fees are already set. It doesn't matter what type. If you need a CUP, it's going to be the same fees. The operating permit, we're returning to City Council when we come back with the cultivation ordinance to recommend what the fee should be for the operating permit. So that one's not done yet.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Gentlemen, and then Justin again. Okay.
Hi, Betty Williams. I have a question regarding the delivery-only dispensary. So you just need a business license? You don't have to have a regular permit or go through the CUP or all those other guidelines for the delivery?
No, you will have to go through the same thing. It will be a different, it'll be slightly different because you won't have people going to the site, but any marijuana-related business in the city has to go through a conditional use permit process and get an operating permit.
Okay, so a dispensary, a delivery, a cultivation, if they're all at the same site, would all have to get a CUP?
Well, we can only have 2 uses at each site, so that's part of state law. But yes, if you want to do business in the city of Sacramento, and you have to get a conditional use permit for your business and an operating permit for your business.
Okay.
Anthony Nunes, 420 Consulting. Question a little off topic, but the hemp, industrial hemp and manufacturing CBD, what is the city's current position on that?
We haven't gotten there yet. We just haven't. It's all new, and it's not at the right now. In terms of how we're going down the list, cultivation, delivery, manufacturing and testing, transportation and distribution, and then all the other things we hadn't quite thought of yet, probably including that, because it's not the first time we've gotten the question. Yeah, CDB is an extraction process, so that would be manufacturing.
Okay, and does the city look at hemp-based products as cannabis? Have they separated that?
We haven't looked at that yet. We'll probably have to at some point. Not many people are coming up with hemp, though. They're coming with cannabis.
Right, thank you.
when we're talking about banking, the city is collecting taxes. So how is the city going to go about collecting taxes without a banking system when it comes to cash? I know the Board of Equalization has said they would take cash, but certain
We take cash.
Are you picking it up? Because currently, if I
No, you guys have to bring it here.
well, here's the safety issue. I'm parking in a parking structure and carrying a duffel bag of cash into this office?
Yep. We don't like it either. We don't. Honestly, we're filled with the members of the public, and we have people coming in with duffel bags full of cash. That's why, as the government affairs director, I'm recommending that we lobby for a change in the rules. But at this point, that is outside our purview. The state can't change it unless the federal government changes it. It's not ideal. Some folks do have some forms of banking that they've been able to manage. We accept it.
I'm not asking you to change the banking. I'm asking you to maybe drive around an armored car and pick up taxes from locations so that we don't have to.
You can hire an armored car to transport your taxes. That's fine with us. It's not our responsibility. You have to pay your taxes.
But we're all talking about public safety, aren't we?
Right, and you should contribute towards it. We want everything to be safe, but honestly,
isn't my contribution to taxes?
Tell me another business where we go and pick up the taxes from folks. It's just, it's not.
They also all have the access to banking.
Sure.
So are we going to find a middle ground in this idea, or are we still going to carry duffel bags of cash into here? Because a lot of armored cars will not accept our cash because they put themselves into a situation where they can't pick up cash because, once again, they're part of the banking structure.
No, we accept it.
So we have a nice currency counter. So we're ready to take your cash. But we can't go get it from you. Talk to Justin.
No, there's definitely an opportunity to hire a firm to handle that for you. For all the entrepreneurs that are in this industry, there is absolutely a space for that. But it's not the city's responsibility to get it here safely. No.
So the banking issue, just to sum it up, just to piggyback off of you, 8 rules were given to the banking system that the banks had to follow. The banks said that we're not an investigative type of organization. We just want to take the money and deposit. So until they get a more streamlined, I'm assuming, program or POS system that's interlinked, that tracks where the cash is coming, I don't know. But enjoy the cash. It's not that bad if you know how to hide it. So, or give it to Justin and we'll transport. That's hide it in a sense of, seat to sale tracking.
Yeah.
This is for Ms. Patterson. If the 600 feet distance from a parkway, I know that we had a facility that was near a park walkway. It was merely named a park walkway, but there was nothing other than loitering and various other type of things that were happening. It was a park walkway that is next to a river, but it was not utilized in any way or form as a park. If a language says park walkway, are we still interpreting it as a park, an active park? Is that what you were talking about earlier? Or if there's like a creek that's separating?
No, well, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at what the concern is, I think, from the council, are large numbers of children. So we're going to be looking at what kind of definition could we come up with that will protect under 21 peoples as opposed to people that are on a jogging path and it's not as active.
So it's a case by case that can be reviewed.
Well,
by planning
no,
or
it's
zoning.
more we need to come up with we need to develop the definition. We haven't developed the definition to come back yet.
Understood. Got it. Thank you so much.
And when we say come back, again, staff will come back with a recommendation. What the council decides to do with the recommendation is up to them.
Hi, Steve again. So at the last council meeting, the city attorney said he could come back with a nexus study and the NRP, put some structure around the NRP in about 2 or 3 weeks. It's 2 weeks. Where do you see that headed?
That's coming back on January 5th. We have our last city council meeting is December 13th. The new mayor-elect is being sworn in. Then the council goes on recess. It'll be the first meeting in January. You're welcome. That was an easy one.
Arthur again. In some cities that go through a CUP process for this and other industries, there is a process in which you can go in and sit with a planner and talk about whether or not a certain project might pass initial muster without any commitments. Is the city entertaining such a process?
Absolutely. We do that with any business, any applicant. You can go to community development, make an appointment anytime to go and see that. We have lots of folks who send us addresses and say, what do you think? We give them our best guesstimate. Yeah, that's not a problem. We do that for everyone. Oh, yeah. We can only generalize.
Yeah, but I am going to, yes, that we can only, I am going to say, we have had some people come in, but we don't know that much right now to tell you, but especially on manufacturing or labs. And we're still, even though they've passed the cultivation, I think until we get the schools the parks wrapped up, there's not much that we can tell you. So, but yes, you can come in and have a pre-application meeting.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nate. When you refer to buffer on the park, are you adding more feet or are you subtracting more feet?
We originally, as staff, didn't recommend, we recommended buffers for a number of different uses. The Planning Commission and the Law and Legislation Committee recommended no buffers except the one state requirement, which is 600 feet from schools. When we came to City Council on the 29th of November with a recommendation, we did get direction that we should look into and bring forward to City Council for consideration a sensitive use buffer from parks. So, I'm sorry, it was the 22nd. Yeah, you didn't miss a meeting. It was the 22nd of November. So we just got the direction and we're looking into it. And again, we're trying to use common sense, and we're certainly not trying to further reduce the number of places that will be available for you to do business. We're just trying to find that delicate balance, one that works for the City Council.
So this buffer zone, this buffer is actually increase in feet. Is that correct?
Well, the feet are the buffer zone. So if you have a park and this, let's say the City Council, staff recommends, for example, 300 feet from the distance. We still don't know. It's going to make it come further out. So that's seems to be where they're going. Again, they may change their minds.
Oh, okay. So to understand this correctly, currently right now 600 feet. And
from schools.
From school and park. And
no, not school and park. State law is only from schools.
Oh. So what about parks? Isn't it 600 feet?
There is no requirement on parks right now, but the City Council directed staff to come back with a recommended buffer. And they have the right to do that to increase the number of sensitive uses beyond schools, which are required by the state. They have asked staff to look into a buffer zone around parks, and we're going to bring it back to them to review.
Thank you.
Sure.
To whom can we address questions or potential language suggestions for the buffer zone?
To Renelle, and she will make sure it gets to the team.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's handy.
Good afternoon, Kimberly Cargile from A Therapeutic Alternative. Hi. So I'm sure you're well aware that Sacramento is the #3 city in the United States for parks. So we have more parks than the majority of cities in the United States. So I'm suggesting maybe parks with playgrounds is a good suggestion. We've seen in other ordinances that it makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
So
we're looking for where children actually gather, not open space, not a walkway. We really don't want to over-concentrate any more than we already have to. So yeah, it'll be commonsensical, but absolutely, we want active. We're talking about active playgrounds where children gather regularly.
Okay. And then you said we're going to come back before City Council the first Tuesday in January?
Regarding the neighborhood responsibility plan, just that piece, the rest will come in the next piece will come in late January.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Hi, my name's Justin. My question is about nurseries and genetics, things like that. Is that going to be a separate permit or is that going to fall under cultivation?
Cultivation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's not saying it won't change. If we learned anything in Denver, it's that it changes constantly. But trust me, when it's a change that you guys want, you'll be wanting us to change it. So keep the information flowing. We're not experts in this at all. We need you guys. He's got the mic.
This is Justin, I guess number 1 or 2. Thank you, Justin. To piggyback off the other Justin's question, the dispensaries currently that are permitted have a nursery part in their ordinance, or that was in the language in the conditional use permit. So do they get to exercise the nursery portion of their CUP?
They can have immature plants.
Correct.
That's currently in the code. We're not recommending changing that.
Correct. Got it. Excellent.
I think one of the questions that I would ask in that specific, since we're getting to minutia, I guess a little bit, with that separate carve out, can that be carved out as a separate license later? For
Are you actually asking us to regulate more?
No, I'm just so right now you just said that the nursery component would be considered a cultivation license.
Right.
Cultivation is part of the existing licensed dispensary framework to have immature plants. So
It's just immature plants for sale is the intent of that. And if it gets out of hand, then we'll have to change the code to be more specific.
So that was the intent, was immature plants for sale.
Immature plants for sale.
Okay.
Well, right, yeah, to qualified patients, but that's in the medical marijuana dispensaries.
So to carve that out, we would look at that as additional regulation and potentially a completely separate standalone CUP.
Could be, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and it's a different business. It's a cultivation business. Thank you. This gentleman had a question, Ken. Oh, and then
Thank you. My name is Peter Caloris. I'm an attorney, and I have a couple of questions. First question is regarding cultivation, applications to cultivate. When do you estimate they will start accepting these applications?
Okay, step 1, we have to come back with a cultivation ordinance that includes the neighborhood responsibility plan, the potential buffer zone for parks, and the change in the operating permit portion that allows a little bit more flexibility in criminal history. Then we have to have the fees. Then we have to lift the moratorium. Then we start accepting applications, we hope, by the second quarter of 2017.
By the second quarter, okay.
We hope.
We hope.
That's
okay.
the aim.
Okay.
Yes.
So do we. Regarding these cultivation applications, they're broken down into 3 classes, A, B, and C, up to 5,000, 5,000, and 10,000.
We will mirror that.
Sorry?
The city will mirror the state's.
Right. But my question is this. Are you going to put caps on the dispensaries per license category?
That's not the direction we got from the council.
Okay. Okay. Question regarding distribution. When do you think you will be able to start contemplating and putting together a plan for distribution?
This summer.
This summer.
Spring, summer is the hope. That's where we'd be.
Okay, not to holding you to this, but when do you think applications for distribution will be accepted?
Well, if we have adequate stakeholder outreach in the meetings that we've been having and keeping the conversation going, it could be anywhere from 3 to 6 months from when we start working on it. So
You think you'll start working on it in the summertime?
I believe so. I think we'll be there, if not a little bit before.
we're doing some work on all of them right now. But you got to understand the research, and especially the legal research in this stuff. It includes an incredible amount of time.
That's why I'm asking.
And so we're doing the best we can on getting through this. But there's a ton of work out there.
And I appreciate the work you're doing.
We're trying to do it right. Yeah.
Thank you. And regarding the distribution licenses, again, no cap on those as well?
I suspect there'll be a cap on those.
You suspect there will be?
Right. Actually, the council hasn't given us direction to even work on those, but we know we have to. So we're starting on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, I think.
Thank you. My question is regarding the research and development for genetic manipulation. Would this be under any, would it come under the GROW, or would it go into some other category?
Yeah, it sounds like a cross between manufacturing and cultivation. That's one we haven't gotten yet. As the proposal comes, I'm sure we could figure it out. Renell's writing them down. Then we can look, but we don't really know right now. Part of me says that's manufacturing. Part of me says that's cultivation. Part of me says that's lab testing because you're looking at it under a microscope. I honestly don't know. We haven't. If you have anything you'd like to share with us, please send it because that's a new one. And we've been doing this for over a year.
Couple of friends. These are scientists. They work for big companies. Their interest is to get into this with research, where they can manipulate the genes and create something that essentially would be more medically, suited.
And then that makes a lot of sense. And depending upon, if it's a pharmaceutical company, they're obtaining it. We may have nothing to do with it. It may be such a small portion of what they're working on. I honestly don't know in that case.
So from the zoning standpoint, where that facility can be held, would there be anything that you can recommend?
We can't because there is no such animal yet. If there was a proposal, then we could sit down with planning and see if that would work. But I'd love to give you a good answer, but I honestly don't know. We haven't thought about that. We've had some folks say, what about research? And we also know the state is funding research for medical, additional medical tests, I believe through the UC system, but in fact at UC Davis, but we haven't ventured there yet. But if you have a nice R&D firm who wants to come to the city, our economic development folks would love to talk to you, and we'll figure out the conditional use permit as we go along, because that would be a great thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Justin again. My question is regarding the cap for the permits on cultivation. Who are going to be the first to get those? Who's your...
Well, we haven't recommended a cap, and it's first come, first served. If you get your application in, we look at your application in the order in which it was received.
Okay.
Wouldn't be fair otherwise.
Yeah, because that was my... Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kim behind you.
Hi, Josh. Oops, sorry, Josh. So on that, then you said you'll be accepting these applications then, beginning in.
Once the cultivation ordinance is updated and passed, including all of that, and we lift the moratorium, then we can start accepting applications.
Okay, so we don't know when this queue that Justin was just referring to is going to begin, correct?
I would say we're shooting for early second quarter of 2017.
Okay, and unrelated question on cultivation. 22,000 square feet is the current canopy maximum in any edifice for cultivation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can there be multiple edifices on a APN if it's zoned appropriately?
Yes.
And is there a limit to how many of those there can be?
We haven't seen it yet, so it's hard to tell.
Okay.
Don't want it to be as big as a small city, but...
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Hi, Kimberly Cargyle. So to continue with this ongoing question that's been asked to you a million different ways, one small thing. Let's say that it passes the end of January, completely passes, the cultivation ordinance passes. Are applications going to be available the next day, or is there like a 30-day or 60-day or 90-day waiting period?
Yeah, we've got to build in some time. We don't even have software that accommodates this yet, so it's quite new. But it'll be a little bit of time afterwards, but hopefully not long, because we know folks have been waiting.
Okay, thank you.
We're anticipating that too. Oh.
Hi, my name's Ryan. In regards to the application process for the cultivation, for the people that submitted that are pre-application back in February this year, will they have first priority to submit applications, or does that not matter?
No, that wasn't a pre-application experience. That was a registration.
Okay.
And so we could keep you involved. It's going to be first come, first serve for all applicants.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lola. I have a question about the process with note-taking by Renell and all. Where will this information, this dialogue, be posted?
It'll be, Renell, can you answer that?
As some of you may know, we're working on a web page specifically dedicated to marijuana, but we do have a little small portion on our city website for special business permits. So I have to get the video that we're currently videoing now made into a YouTube, because we don't have any closed circuit television for it. So I'll get it made into a YouTube video, send you guys the link out as well as the notes. Once I finish them, give me a few days, please. And then I will also have it on the website. So I'll make that all available to you guys.
And all of our previous ones are available too in the same spot. So.
Hi, I'm John with UFCW. Two-part question. One would be, where would we submit public policy language concerning labor standards for community members working in cannabis businesses, and to whom that would be? Second question would be, is there consideration on delivery specifically to ensure that the drivers delivering to patients are workers or employees of the licensed delivery company? In other cities, they've allowed Uber-type drivers to operate. Are you going to do that here in Sacramento?
That is not the intention. When we recommended lifting the prohibition on delivery from dispensaries, it had to be to an employee or a contractor of that dispensary. I don't believe that we will be recommending that. As far as labor policy, if there's anything you want to send in, you're welcome to send it in. We have not gotten into that issue at this point, and we haven't had direction to work on that. We're trying to create the framework for folks to do business, for starters.
So specifically, you said a contractor of that business. So you could have 50 independent contractors of a licensed dispensary delivering medicine to patients here without being licensed with the city.
No, that's not what I'm saying. When we recommended that the prohibition be lifted, it would be for a dispensary employee or a licensed contractor, and that was it. Now we're going to go back. If there are delivery companies, I can't tell you what the parameters will be yet, because we haven't written it yet. But if you have language you'd like to share, we'd be happy to look at it. Because again, it's yet another thing that doesn't quite exist in the regulated world yet. So we're a little bit at a loss. We know it's happening. How it's happening, the details we don't know yet. And we can't know too much because it's operating outside of permitted uses right now.
So will the time to apply be announced more in a stakeholder meeting or in like a city council meeting?
I would assume both. And we will send out a notification via email to the stakeholders, which is the great thing about that registration list. We can keep you guys abreast. So if you're on that list, you will be the first to know. And we may even do. Yeah, it should be part of the council item when we commit to the city council that we will be ready, and we'll know by then exactly what date.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Hi, Justin again. How will you be accepting those applications? Are those like a send-in, mail-in kind of thing, or are you going to be accepting applications online?
Our hope is to have an online process, but we may not have that in place in time, in which case then it would be come in person or mail it in.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and
I was just going to say, right now, yes, the use permit is a come into the office process.
Betty Williams again. I have a staffing company, so I sort of wanted to piggyback off of the delivery service with the contract work. So, for example, a staffing company could contract with a dispensary, and I'm just listening to you versus a Uber or.
So thank you for your input, because we're gonna provide this to our attorney to help sharpen the code. Our intent is that it would be a company that does the delivery service and not farm it out to a bunch of individual independent contractors. So that's, I believe, the intent we're going on, and we'll have to write it up to try and get there.
We also envision at some point knowing these vehicles are equipped to carry that kind of cash, and limits on how much cannabis they can carry with them, limits on how much cash they can carry with them for public safety reasons, as we talked about.
I already got the mic. Jason again. Do you know ballpark what the application fees will be, roughly?
No.
So we can get prepared financially for it?
Expensive.
Even
Brad's
for
the
a
revenue
delivery,
manager.
which doesn't make much to begin with. So it's going to be the same as a brick and mortar, which goes back to my original concern.
So here's what the application fees are going to cover: the cost of the city processing and the city enforcement, which will be funding police and code enforcement. So it cannot be greater than the service we provide or the enforcement we provide.
But you see, I'm still kind of back at square. That doesn't really answer.
I don't know yet. I'm still trying to.
So I don't know. Okay. Okay.
Also, we need to know exactly what council wants before we can calculate the fee, because they typically do change things as we go along.
My drivers are $10.99 right now. Is that going to change?
Well, you guys just brought up something we hadn't thought about, so we're going to get with our attorney and see how we craft this.
We just need to kind of know how to position ourselves for.
Yeah, and I'm afraid we can't answer these questions because we haven't dealt with the detail.
Just had to ask anyway.
Just as a reference, we represent pharmaceutical workers. We also represent grocery workers, tobacco. There's a thing called a chain of custody. So when you can follow product, and as A, B, C, and some of the other things, if one of our members were to sell somebody cigarettes who weren't supposed to have them, one of our union members would get the citation and not the company. But a lot of companies now, by outsourcing work or 1099ing them or using vendors, they insulate themselves from any type of accountability or liability of where that product goes or how that product is handled. That's why we brought up who's going to be handling the product, what's the chain of custody going to be, right down to the patient.
And that's actually really good input, because as Brad just said, those are things that had not occurred to us at the time. So now we know, and we will look into it and see what's best. And and there's state seat to sale tracking. So we're looking forward to the state catching up to where the cities are. It's kind of this, well, you guys can go first, but there are so many other issues at the state level that aren't taken care of. We're talking about doing public information campaigns, DUI campaigns, minor campaigns, all these things that really fall in the state's purview, but they're not ready yet. So we're going to have to get ahead of it and do it for our city. So anything you can share with us, we'd love to have, because we honestly don't have the breadth of experience that you guys have.
Question is, will the licensing fees be refundable?
No.
Non-refundable, both of them, CUP as well as owner's permit.
If
CUP is different.
this, yeah, that's based. There's a set amount that you turn in with a CUP, and if it's less, we give it back to you. If it's more, because it takes longer, then you pay more. With the operating permit, once you submit, it's non-refundable. Or, well, if somebody quits, yeah, all of our fees are non-refundable.
Hi, Brad is the name. On the CUP, I presume that the ownership groups of the property are going to apply for the CUPs. Are the licensing fees going to be for the property ownership, or excuse me, are the CUP fees going to be exclusively for the ownership groups, or might they be able to pass those off to the tenants?
They're going to negotiate that. It doesn't, as far as we are concerned, the property owner has to give permission for the business to operate on their site, but who pays for the CUP is really up to them. But the CUP stays with the land, and the operating permit is with the individual operating the business. So certainly, capitalism, negotiate with your tenants and decide what's best. In some cases, somebody may have a 40,000 square foot warehouse. They have a couple of, 10,000 square feet businesses, different ones. You may want to do it proportionally. We've heard all kinds of proposals, but that's up to you guys. But the property owner must give their permission. No, it's a standard fee.
Hi there. For commercial cultivation, as of right now, there is no distance to the park, and you're actually going to recommend a buffer. Do you have an idea what's the distance?
Staff did not recommend a buffer. The city council directed us to come back with one, so we don't know yet. We just got that direction a couple weeks ago.
Do you know when you know?
We have to bring that back when we come back to finish the cultivation ordinance. So probably the end of January, beginning of February.
Chris, so the enforcement. What part of the money is going to be going to enforcement, and is that enforcement of other ones that aren't registered or legal, or?
It's going to be enforcement for both. It's going to be to ensure that you're operating properly under the law, and it's also going to pay for getting rid of the illegal operators. So it's honestly going to go to administer everything that has to do with cannabis. One of the things that we keep hearing is the increase in the number of busts of illegal grows in Denver. That's because now they have the money to do it. They didn't have the money before they regulated it. So we assume, too, that we will be able to get rid of the bad actors once we have our legitimate folks up and going. But it'll pay for both.
Thank you.
Pardon me? So to speak.
A CUP process disproportionately gives power to the landowner, especially when you're going through an operational permit when it comes to showing your operations as a business. Do you think this might give a conflict of interest when it comes to an operator and a landowner when they're negotiating their own contracts? Because you are pretty much allowing a business to be at a location, but now they can't move their business to anywhere else. So it gives a lot of power to the landowner when it comes to being able to move your own independent business that you've just got licensed.
Well, you can't get a license to operate without the permission of the landowner on the land on which you're going to operate. So you wouldn't, if that landowner doesn't have a CUP for their property or chooses not to have you as a tenant, as a cannabis operation, then there's no license to be had. You go for your operations license once if you're a tenant, not a property owner and a business owner. after you know that you've secured a property where your landlord wants you there. That's part of the private business. The city doesn't have say over that.
But once you've doubled or tripled the value of that property by going through a conditional use permit, now that landowner has the ability to either evict you and bring in someone else, increase rent. It just puts a lot of pressure on
Capitalism. Honestly,
regulations help capitalism from taking over.
Yeah, that's going to be
whole
the
point.
same with any use permit. Anytime land is entitled to be allowed to be used for something, it becomes more valuable. So we have that in everything from, maps with lots for private homes. Land becomes more valuable when there's a use for it. Unfortunately, that's just the way the system works, and we don't control that. In some cases, the cultivators, the businesses are also going to own their property. And so they don't have that conflict. But each situation is different, and that's frankly business advice. We know a lot of properties have been, the values going up. There's a green rush. We read all of this. We can't make recommendations based upon projected business issues. We're public policy people, and we're trying to put in the best possible policy that meets the expectations of the city council and the people who live and work in Sacramento. And it's not easy.
But you can share power when it comes to operating a business on a particular piece of property, and allowing someone to take their license to another location and not allowing the landowner to completely rule over an individual's business. Because we are talking about a different business structure here. That's why we're having a whole marijuana web page. This is a different business. And so we have to sometimes treat it like a different business, because that's all we've been talking about. So to just default back to CUP process and throw that in our face like that's what we're supposed to deal with, it's like what we need to deal with is we need to deal with the combination between running a small business, because am I supposed to spend $3 million on a property to be able to secure my business at one location if I'm going to go through what may be a 6-month to 18-month process of a conditional use permit?
First of all, nothing's meant to be thrown in anyone's face. But we also can't, as public sector employees, give you business advice. So we want to give other folks a chance to talk, but these are business risks. And if the cannabis industry wants to be legitimate like every other business, they will be treated the same way, except for the public safety issue, which we do have, and the perception issue. But it would be absolutely inappropriate and outside our purview to get involved in negotiations between someone and their landowner. That said, those are business risks, and that's something that is literally outside our purview. If you want to talk offline, we can. Getting a good lawyer.
Hi, Justin again.
Hi, Justin.
Okay, so on that topic, how specific are these zones for cultivation going to be? Because that could be one way that we could avoid that problem by opening up the zones and not allowing the landlords in those very specific zones to raise the rent because of that.
We cannot decide how much money people charge for land that they own. The city cannot do that. The land that is properly zoned, that land that's zoned for cultivation was listed out in the staff report. We have to come back with that one additional buffer. But as far as the price of your land and the relationship with your landlord, that is strictly a private business matter, and the city does not have the purview, the ability, or would you want us to get into your personal business?
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, by opening up the zones, it would cause less of a
They've decided where they're
monopoly.
going to allow it and where they're not. The big question was whether or not they were going to allow it in commercial zones. And one of our arguments as staff was we need to allow it in commercial zones so it's not over-concentrated in certain areas in the city. We wanted to be able to spread it out. We did the best that we could, but those decisions have been made by the city council at this point.
I'm kind of new to this. So as far as the zoning is right now, are there very specific zones where this is going to be okay?
Yes. You need to check out the staff report, which is online.
Okay.
and it'll tell you, and it was the ones that Joy listed earlier where it's permitted, and it's fairly wide, but most of it is in District 2 and in District 6.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I saw this map online with yellow zones that are within 600 feet of a park or school, and then green zones. Is that map still being used, or?
Well, now that we have been directed by council to come back with the park buffer zone, it could change. But generally, it's pretty reflective of what was in the staff report. Again, every time the city council looks at it, and we have a new mayor coming in, they have the authority and the right to change their mind. But I think the zones are pretty solid, with the exception of figuring out that park buffer zone and whether or not they even accept it. It was a direction at the end. They still may reject it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, it's Philip again. So I'm curious about the fees and which ones are annual and which ones are one time.
So the one-time fees would be the conditional use permit, and then the operating fees will either be annual or biannual. And I'm going to ask a question. Would you guys rather pay a larger fee for 2 years, or would you rather have your costs you split out annually? Annual? Is that what I'm hearing? Well, then there would be review annually too. Right.
Hi, Kimberly Cargile again. I just wanted to clarify that the business owner can go through the conditional use permit process, not just the landowner.
Correct. You just need the permission of the landowner.
Okay. And can you go through a conditional use permit process while you're in escrow?
Sure. I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, if the seller signs off. Yeah. And the lady in the red in the back hasn't had a few people who have gone. We'll get back to you, Justin. All right.
Just to follow up with the comment about the overconcentration and the zoning requirements, I know that was a huge theme of the last meeting. And just out of curiosity, has the city had any conversations with the county about lifting the ban?
The county won't. I mean, unless they change it on their own. We're starting under the new administration when Mayor Steinberg comes in. The city and county are going to have joint meetings once a month, and I think that may be a matter of discussion, and the new board of supervisors may be more open to that. Of course, we'd like them to, because we'd love to spread the wealth, and there's enough interest that could go, but that's going to be purely up to the county. We are also in discussions with them to make sure we can get, for those of you who want to do bakeries, environmental health inspections and other things that the county is responsible for, and make sure that they're going to service businesses in the city.
Just to follow up with that, what can the community do in terms of helping those discussions take place?
Go to Board of Supervisors meetings and speak during public comment. Go meet with Phil Cerna, Supervisor Cerna, and the other members of the Board of Supervisors. Let your voice be heard. Same thing here. If there's something that's happening that you're not pleased with, the gentleman from the unions, talk to the elected officials. At the end of the day, they set we make the best recommendations we can as public administrators. Then the city council is elected to make those decisions as elected representatives. So you have the right to visit your council member, express your opinions, and as much as you have the right to talk to us, but they have the power to make the change. So I would highly recommend visiting your elected officials on that. I live in the county too. Yes. Oh, sorry.
John with UFC. Was the planning department involved in any of these zonings and buffings and things in this process?
Absolutely. And this went to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission recommended no buffer zones. The Law and Legislation Committee also recommended no buffer zones, except the state required 600 feet. And at the end of the city council meeting, the city council still directed staff to come back and look at active parks.
Primarily because I can understand not wanting a red light district and putting buffers around the retail dispensary component of it, but the rest of the supply side of it, that is counterintuitive to just urban planning. We put retail together, we put commercial together, we put industry together. Why do we have buffers around supply sides on the cannabis industry?
You can always visit your council members and express your opinion. I can't answer you. I like my job.
Yes, Peter again. I want to ask a question about the application process again. There are a number of deliverables from the applicant's point of view that need to be completed before the application is going to be converted to a license to grow. And one of those deliverables is the conditional use permit, which is a time-consuming process. So my question is, you talked about a first come, first served. So when does that line start forming? Because do we have to wait until the conditional use permit is issued before?
And that one we envisioned, actually. If you have a CUP in process, you can refer to the case number on your operating permit, but you will still need both the operating permit and the conditional use permit. But you can apply for them concurrently. But you can't start operating until both are in place.
Understood, but the position in line doesn't, you don't get your position in line until you've got the CUP number submitted with your application.
Yeah. Simply,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, you're sure.
So we might not be able to finish.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have their CUP completed.
Right, but my position in line is still saved until the CUP is either denied or issued.
True. Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Ryan again. In regards to submitting the application, did you say it was going to be the first quarter or the second quarter?
We believe it'll be the end of the first quarter or beginning of the second quarter because of all of the things that have to be in place before we can start accepting it.
Okay.
We'd rather under-promise and over-deliver.
Absolutely, yeah. And how soon will we know about the fees and what information you guys actually need?
We're trying to come back to council with the recommended fee, lifting the cultivation moratorium, the buffer zones, all the things we discussed earlier by the end of January, beginning of February. There's a podium behind me. Whoops.
Okay. All right,
okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
It's Josh again, sorry.
Hey, Josh.
I spaced my question. It was that...
That never happens in these meetings.
I know. My question was on the conditional use permits and is whether when the date comes that we can apply for them, there obviously you said it's going to be first come, first served, so there's no merit-based, I mean, let's imagine that the first 10 permits that came in were slipshot done, people who weren't, or were okay, but then the 15th permit in line is something that's stellar and has all their ducks in line. Is there no meritocracy involved?
We put a lot of thought into that, and originally we had, if you have a social responsibility plan and you give some of your product to veterans and you give your employees more than minimum wage, and we had all of these wonderful criteria that we thought would make for a meritorious situation. It's so subjective that we felt as staff we could not, in fact, do that. We couldn't say yours is better. What if it's somebody who's been in jail on and off because of cannabis and doesn't have the means to put forward these kinds of plans? So then you have a reverse social justice. We got to a point where we could not find a fair and objective way to measure that. Some cities do have cannabis commissions, but that is yet another level of bureaucracy, and we didn't want to add that either. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but as a city, we kind of have to be blind to every applicant and look at each application on its own merits. If, like you say in the example, the first 10 are garbage and they're incomplete, we're going to keep accepting other ones and get to the ones that are ready and have those people come back with what they need, or they won't end up getting one. So, and certainly when you go for your CUP, if you have community benefits you're planning on offering, you know, let them know, let the community know, because you don't want the neighborhood association, the business improvement district coming and fighting your project at planning commission, with the zoning administrator, or if it got appealed to planning commission. So it still behooves you to be a good business person, but as city staff, we did not want to have that subjectivity and say, well, you know, to me, the environment's the most important. Somebody else, the veterans are most important. We couldn't find a way to do that appropriately and still say it's capitalism and you have to make business decisions, and otherwise we'd be talking out of both sides. So.
And so, just to be clear, then, our current state of affairs is we camp out in line out front there for first spot in line. I said that as a joke.
We're not. We
I said
don't
it as a
know.
joke earlier,
No,
but
it's
honestly,
possible, and it is definitely possible that that's the way it goes, or that it's online and you're sitting there at midnight ready to
click.
send.
Wow.
If there was another better way to do it,
it's like dead shows.
yeah, if there was another better way to do it, that we would be happy to. The other issue is we can't go on your past operating history because, unfortunately, technically, everybody's operating illegally. So we can't go, oh, they've been a great business, because we don't know you exist. So we're really kind of stuck in that. There's definitely merit to what you're saying. We're not in a position to do that. If we've had a lot of complaints about your place, we'll know that too, but we just, yeah. Sounded like a great idea, but it's also one of the reasons people are leaving Oakland and coming here, because they put so much in their ordinance about what you have to do that it pushed a lot of small businesses and social justice folks out of the system. So.
Hi there. For CUP, is if you turn your application and you miss maybe a simple thing, are you actually going to be queued back in line, or you're in the same position?
No, your planner will contact you and tell you what you need to do.
But you're still in your.
You're still in line, and there's no caps right now.
Okay.
So it would be one thing if we said, oh, we're only going to take 20. We're not. There's no caps, so you can keep applying. We will get to them as best we can. And there may come a point where staff says to the council, you know what, we have 400 applications we can't process anymore, and we would recommend a cap. But right now there is no cap, so there shouldn't be that kind of angst at the moment. If you have a property that is zoned properly and you're ready for it and you submit your application, the chances are you're going to get your permit and you're going to be okay.
Okay, and if they were going to consider caps, would they be based? Do you think they're based on numbers of producers, or is it based on overall square footage? That because they don't want to have
I think it would
millions of square feet.
Yeah, I think it would be based on overconcentration. That there's a particular area in the city where it's just too much, and the neighbors start going, "Oh, wait, please." So it would really be a reaction from the community. So staff is not recommending caps on cultivation.
So.
Oh, hi.
Hi, my name is Christy.
Hi, Christy.
As far as the tenant improvement process, will that be the same way it is for everything else? Go
Yes.
through the building, so there isn't a special department?
Nope,
that will
same
handle this?
community development, planning, building inspection,
Okay.
all of normal, legitimate.
Thank you.
Sure. Ken.
Anthony Nunes, 420 Consulting Group. One of the application types that I've been involved in that can maybe help you is there was an opening period for the first round of applications, maybe the first 15 days. Everybody that applied during that period then was in the first tier, and then those were reviewed randomly, or they threw kind of a lottery pick out of that group. And then after that date, it would be a second group. That way there's not a line at the door, people camping and all that crazy thing to be first in line, but yet it still favors the people that get in early in blocks. That's worked in the process I've seen in the past.
Well, thank you. That actually might be something we could consider. Yeah, and if you please send us emails, since I can't write while I'm up here. Oh, Renell's writing. Silly me. Sorry. Thank you, Renell.
Jason, last question, hopefully. What concern should we have, if any, about Jeff Sessions, who said only bad people smoke weed, and the KKK was cool until he found out they smoked weed? Like, what, do we do anything about him, or, like, because I have venture capitalists that were interested, and then they hear that Jeff's coming to town, and they wonder, should they get involved? And I wonder, what power does a person like that have over what we're talking about today?
That person has power to prosecute city officials and state officials who go ahead and regulate this. We're not thinking about that at this time. We're going by California law and really hoping for the best. But that this gentleman also thinks the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act should be struck, and I have a child with autism. So there's a million reasons to be afraid of this guy.
Yeah.
That said, it's outside our ability to do anything.
That was a question from one of my potential investors that I had problems kind of.
It's a tough one. If right now the platform says states' rights, which is completely different from what his position is, I honestly, it would be a crystal ball to try to figure out what comes next, because I couldn't have seen this in a crystal ball. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that. It's so depressing.
So this new fella is troublesome in essence, from what I'm gathering from you. The new
I'm sorry?
Attorney General. He could be
You mean the national one?
The one.
Not the state of California. Yeah, it's something that's worth being concerned about.
So do you think that even the medical being accepted in the state of California and the recreational?
I can't give any advice. To my
No, sir.
knowledge, his position is related to both medical and adult use.
How long have you been working on a medical marijuana in Sacramento?
Me personally?
Yes, ma'am.
A little over a year. I normally do our regular government affairs, but because it's a new policy area and Brad and Joy are so awesome to work with, I took this.
I was going to say they've brought you up to date rather very quickly. So
Thank
good
you.
job on
Thank you. I normally
Congress
work
and
over at the legislature, so I help with the bills a little bit.
Good job.
Thanks. Yay. Okay. Cool. Well, we appreciate that because we get it. Tonight there'll be a lot of people yelling at us, so it's there's definitely very strong feelings one way or the other. Okay. Anybody else? Well, we thank you so much for your time and your participation. And I'm sorry we can't answer every question, but thank you. Keep staying involved. I got a meeting with Howard.
Yep, see you in a couple hours.
Hey, Renell, I just want to. Hi, Renell. I just want to introduce myself. I set me up on an email update. Just want to say hi.
Wonderful. Nice to meet you as well.
I don't know. I'm Daniela. I spoke to you a couple of times. I just wanted to meet you.
I do recall.
Yeah, so there really isn't a lot about testing. I didn't even bother asking because I know I'm probably the only person.
No, you're probably not the only person. We're still just like
So my concern is that when it comes to testing, there's, we've got the ISO certifications, we've got all the state requirements. I mean, we're heavily regulated already, even without city. And to do all that, and then to order the equipment, and then the time for all that, it takes a really long time for all that to happen. And we're pushed way back at the end, and it's going to be required in 2018. And there's only one lab in Sacramento.
we're hoping to get something by the beginning of the second quarter, but again.
Okay, so it could be because
We're
she was
still
saying
trying to bring
summer.
it
I was like,
back.
no,
Yeah,
because I mean
we're
we
still trying
need
to bring it
so
back.
many months to get things just set up and going properly because we've got it, in scientific, it's a whole different ballgame than just going.
Kind of, as you can see with everything else, we're doing what we can.
I know you
to
are,
get
but
there
that's why I
as
was wondering if I should try to push and go to any of the board members or anything like that to try to put it with something like that.
I doubt that it's going to get with cultivation.
Okay, that's
we're at
right.
two different locations, but we are still working on trying to get it back with manufacturers.
Okay.
So, and again, hopefully quarter or hopefully before the summer. But you're always more than welcome. I mean, if you want to, like I said, write something to city council, we can certainly make sure it's available and the staff are familiar with, the staff meetings. I would say your best bet is to try to start paying attention when we get this back on the schedule for city council and anything.
Okay.
I don't expect that we're going to be regulated
That's what I'm learning, which
do
is
more
nice.
work than
Yeah.
we need to.
Exactly.
So yeah, as soon as we can get it back to city council, we'll probably get it to town council.
Okay. It just didn't seem like it was necessarily that involved for you guys because we are so heavily regulated already. It's like you guys probably don't need to do
And
much.
again,
I'm hoping we'll be easily just kind of.
That's what we're hoping with. It'll probably be one of the easier ones.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping. Okay, thank you so much.
You've got a website